Welcome back, viewers. It's James Kalm, the guy on the bike, bringing you another half-assed report. And today, we're out hitting the skills. We're going to run in and see a show called For Thinkin Long and Dark in the Man Cave. And it's a show by this gentleman, Brent Owens. Thanks for taking some time to talk to us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So I was telling you earlier that I was doing some research, and I actually looked back about 7 years and saw the first YouTube interview I did with you about a show called Knucklehead Blues. And it's nice, you've been here working away, 7 years, you've developed your work. Whittling away, and we're going to take a look at some of the pieces. This one, it's probably one of the bigger, more impressive pieces in the show. What's the title of this piece?
This one's called Out of the Sky.
Out of the Sky. And you said it was made out of a stump. And you said you found this in Philadelphia?
Right, I found this in Philadelphia under a bridge, presumably illegally dumped, and I convinced a friend to help me throw it in the back of my truck and get it up to New York.
And it's got bricks and other kinds of things that the stump has kind of grown around. I was joking with you because you've also started to add these, what is it, chrome pieces from somebody's pimped out car thing here, so you're kind of pimping out the stumps and the painting, and then you're adding on some other carved elements here, kind of little feathers sticking on the end. Mm-hmm. You know, I was kind of wondering, in certain ways, this relates to some of the fetish sculpture that some of the tribes in Africa were doing, where they would kind of carve things and then start hanging in, putting in other kind of important cultural things for them. Do you see this as some kind of maybe a fetish?
Well,
in an aesthetic point?
Yeah, perhaps it speaks to a few of my fetishes a little bit. I mean, I've started to pull in this auto culture stuff and these pieces in the past year or so. I hadn't thought about the connection to that at all with African fetishistic work, but yeah, I mean, definitely some of my concerns and fetishes get rolled up in this.
Now, the actual woodworking you're doing, are you using power tools? Are you doing this with hand chisels and hand tools?
Well, it all varies from piece to piece. So, like some of the pieces.
Let's look at this one over here.
This piece, for instance, started roughing out with a chainsaw, and then with gouges and chisels, and with finer gouges and chisels and knives, and some parts of it. And then there are other things, some of it is sort of ready-made. I mean, this is like a wonderful piece I found on the
when you find some kind of a burl or something, you're incorporating that in. What is the body of this? Is that oak?
The body's maple.
Maple, I thought so. It's
upstate,
beautiful.
Yeah. And
what's the title of this piece?
This piece is called Flamin' Dogs.
Flamin' Dogs, okay. And
this is Flesh Wreath. This is a pretty good example of a chainsaw piece. It's almost exclusively chainsaw and...
is this a laminated piece of wood, or is this part of a stump that you've cut?
There's actually several pieces of wood that are glued together and doweled, and then I've carved back into the form. So like kind of, made this sort of circular shape first and carved back in. And then these are wood-burned sleeve tattoo or portrait tattoos that I found online. So of varying.
Well, you're in a lot of ways you're a pretty straight-ahead sculptor, but a lot of pieces also have these kind of painting or drawing elements on them. How do you see the painting and the drawing conflating with the sculpture things?
Well, I guess in some I like the fact that it's sort of a combination, that it's sort of like rides a line between painting and sculpture with the rugs, for instance, or drawing and sculpture with this, and it's sort of kind of hard to, I guess they're ultimately fundamentally sculptural, but I think of them a little bit as like somewhere in the middle ground there.
Okay, let's look at the carpets.
All right, with these pieces, I was doing this sculptural router thing, and I wanted it to be at least for me, painterly. So I wanted to push it in this painterly direction.
Yeah, this is where the practice definitely crosses over into the painting element. And we were talking a little bit about the type of paint you're using, and even your palette and things like this. We're going to go in the other room and look at some more of the rug pieces, but you were talking about that you actually do not copy a rug, that you take certain elements and then sort of
Right. Yeah, I mean,
build on those yourself?
Right, yeah, any one rug might incorporate elements from, say, 3 or 4 other rugs from different parts of the world. And then some parts of them are my own imagery. And then some things are sort of like imagery that I've taken from other rugs, and it's sort of morphed into something maybe a little more bodily, usually, and things like that. So, for instance, this rug that we're before now has...
Does this have a title?
This one's called Leviathan.
Leviathan, and this is what, about 6 foot square, something like that?
Yeah,
roughly?
just about. I think it's 70 by 72 inches. Yeah, so almost 6 foot square. Yeah, this one incorporates some Japanese textile imagery, some of my own imagery, and some imagery from some animal drawings, like illustrations.
Well, I was talking to you about some of the other shows that I've seen recently in the last 2 or 3 months, and I mentioned the fact that there are a couple of other artists that are getting a lot of attention. Corpor is a guy that has a show up right now, I think at Untitled on Orchard Street. And then Lauren Luloff, I think, has a show at The Hole.
She does, yeah.
And those are 2 artists. They're also using a lot of decorative and kind of pattern things. Some of them are based on Asian or African patterns and things like this. And I was wondering, and I asked you about this the other day, whether or not you were familiar with the pattern decorative movement, and whether or not you kind of feel like you're building on that legacy.
I don't know that I feel like I'm specifically tied into that legacy, but I think certainly it seems like there's a lot of pattern decorative stuff, I guess, if you will, in the ether right now, and I think I don't know why that is exactly, but I'm happy to see this other work developing as well, and yeah, it's interesting.
Let's look at these 2 other smaller pieces over here. Now, I was mentioning the fact that we talked about the palette. This is a piece I especially like, the color things that you're doing here.
Thank you. Yeah, these.
And you just start out with a piece of plywood. Tell us a little bit about the process. You come up with your design.
Right, yeah, I work out the design on graph paper ahead of time to sort of establish the scale, and I project the images onto the plywood and draw them out roughly, and then go back in and do a little more drawing, and then I plunge out them, and then I paint them, and then the final stage is to clean the surface of the plywood a little bit by scraping.
So in certain ways, it's almost like a reverse woodcut, in that you're applying the paint and then you sort of sand off the top level. Have you ever done any woodblock prints? I mean, it seems like this would be a natural kind of a medium for you to go into after doing this kind of work.
Yeah, that gets suggested a lot of times. I haven't made, I've done some woodblock prints when I was younger. I haven't done any prints off of these, but may happen in the future. I think I'd have to make pieces specifically for that.
Sure.
Yeah.
So how big is this? This one's got to be about 5 by 3.5, something like that?
Yeah, this one is about 5 by, maybe 30 inches. I don't remember exactly, but... Or maybe 5 by 3, yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. So.
It's also beautiful coloristically.
Thank you. Yeah, these small pieces are a good chance for me to like get a little more experimental with color, and also with just like new approaches and, for instance, with imagery and so on. And then
We're going to take a quick look at some of the stump pieces. Now, do you have a category? I mean, do you call these pieces that are I don't know what you call them, interventions on stumps?
I don't have a name for them or anything, but I do sort of think of them as a little bit like different bodies of work, of course.
And you were saying though that you felt like the stumps are kind of like ready-mades.
Yeah.
Although it's a very organic form of ready-mades.
Right, yeah, I feel like there's a ready-made
Are those bikini bottoms there? Is that what we're looking at?
These are panties, yeah, dollar store
Panties.
And a little bit of other culture there.
And this one I thought was kind of interesting. We'll take a look over here. This made me think of a little bit of Louise Bourgeois. There's a kind of maybe I'm generalizing a kind of a feminist imagery here, maybe, but she did a lot of pieces dealing with kind of caverns, and there is kind of a sexual connotation there with the forms.
Certainly, yeah, certainly.
How about this piece?
This piece is called The Misfit, and it's yet another stump that I chanced upon. I was really lucky to have like such a dramatic form, and just started playing with it. And here's what, this is a little more dollar store aesthetic, perhaps.
Well, I was talking to a couple of guys at the opening, and they asked me what I thought of this piece or what it made me think of, and I said, this made me think of Big Daddy Roth. Are you familiar with Big Daddy Roth, the hot rod guy?
I'm not. Should I be?
This is a major part of art history, mostly for California people, but he did a whole series of weirdos, and there are always these gnarly-looking characters that were usually driving these super hot rods with, supercharged Chrysler engines in them.
Yeah, I think perhaps.
And they always had these big bulging eyeballs sort of sticking out of them, 3 or 4 of them.
Right.
Anyway, we're going to kind of wrap up here, look at a couple of the smaller pieces.
These are called wizard sticks. These are just a little, kind of like a fun project, like a fun little series that deals a little with wizardry and a sort of, and with the supernatural, perhaps in a kind of comical way, I guess.
Okay, and there's another long carpet piece. Anyway, Brent Owens, congratulations.
Thank
Tell
you
us
so
the name
much.
of the show again.
It's called For Thinkin' Long and Dark.
For Thinking Long and Dark. Okay. I always love these upbeat titles. Here at English Kills, out in Bushwick. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
As always, thank you, Kate. Wow, thanks. I've seen you play with Scottish Octopus, right?
Yeah.
Cool. You're good. You're enough.